Italy, a founding member of the European Union, is taking steps to strengthen its ties with China, potentially going against the grain of its closest European allies. What does this mean for the EU's future? Is Italy charting a separate course at the risk of European unity? To understand, let's rewind. Not long ago, the EU imposed tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, citing unfair subsidies. China's response wasn't a simple economic sanction. It was a calculated counterstrike targeting sensitive industries and regions, including Italy's critical export markets. China hit Europe where it hurt most. This wasn't just a political statement. It revealed cracks within the EU. Italy, feeling the impact of China's precision targeting, started reconsidering its stance. Could working with Beijing serve Italy's interests better than aligning strictly with Brussels? For Italy, this debate has real-world consequences, particularly for its economy. Agriculture, one of Italy's key sectors, is a prime example. In 2022, Italy exported over $4 billion worth of agricultural products to China, including olive oil and wine. If that access were suddenly cut off, it would devastate Italian farmers. China's message was clear: partner with us, and your economic interests will be safeguarded. Many Italian farmers, already wary of the EU's hardline approach, have started questioning whether Brussels truly represents their needs. Recent reports indicate that nearly 65% of Italy's agricultural exports rely on stable trade relations with China. For policymakers in Rome, this growing farmer discontent is impossible to ignore. So why is Italy willing to challenge EU norms to deepen ties with China? Italian leaders see an opportunity. The EU's collective decision-making often moves slowly, stalling reforms that could benefit Italy's economy. By engaging directly with China, Italy hopes to sidestep those delays and secure faster economic gains. Italy's foreign minister recently emphasized that the country is focused on forging an independent economic future while maintaining its alliances. This signals a shift. Italy is positioning itself as a leader within the EU, willing to prioritize its own economic needs, even if it disrupts broader EU strategies. China, in turn, offers more than just trade opportunities. Recent agreements aim to expand collaboration in green energy technology and manufacturing. These deals could boost Italian exports to China by 15% within 3 years, creating jobs and attracting investments. Italy is betting on a stronger, more diversified economy through this partnership. But Italy's relationship with China isn't new. Historical ties date back centuries, starting with Marco Polo's travels and a legacy of mutual exchange. Today, Italy is reviving this connection, presenting itself as a cultural and economic gateway between Europe and Asia. However, Italy's pivot is stirring tension in Brussels. A unified foreign policy is a cornerstone of the EU, but Italy's independent approach highlights a growing divide. Polls show that other EU nations like Greece, Portugal, and Spain are also warming to closer ties with China. Could Italy's example inspire a broader shift within the EU? Italy's trade with China has already surged to $70 billion and continues to grow. The success of this partnership raises questions for Europe. If Italy can achieve significant economic benefits through direct ties with Beijing, what's stopping other nations? Yet, this alignment with China risks further fragmentation within the EU. Brussels' pushback against Chinese imports, particularly in technology, could lead to more division. Will Italy's independent path strengthen its economy at the cost of European unity? Only time will tell. Recently, the European Union imposed tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, citing unfair trade practices. However, there's a striking paradox in this move. Italy, with its robust automotive sector, could end up being one of the nations most adversely affected by these tariffs. Italian car manufacturers, particularly those in the luxury and electric vehicle segments, depend heavily on Chinese-sourced components and raw materials. Industry analysts warn that these tariffs might disrupt production chains, increase costs, and ultimately drive up prices for Italian consumers. For Italy, this isn't merely a policy challenge, it's an economic dilemma. The central question is whether Italy can afford to align with Brussels on this issue if it jeopardizes its automotive industry. But the stakes go beyond cars. What other Italian sectors could thrive with stronger ties to China, and which might struggle? Italy's economic ties to China extend well beyond luxury vehicles. Key sectors such as fashion, agriculture, and higher education have flourished thanks to partnerships with China. Iconic Italian fashion brands, for example, are rapidly expanding their footprint in Chinese markets. According to Bloomberg, Italian luxury exports to China surged by 30% in 2023, driven by growing demand from China's burgeoning middle class for premium European goods. However, the benefits of this relationship are not universal. Small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, in Italy, especially those involved in local manufacturing, face stiff competition from lower-cost Chinese imports. For these businesses, deeper economic ties with China might spell increased challenges, not opportunities. Public opinion. Divided perspectives. The debate over closer ties with China isn't limited to businesses. It resonates deeply with the Italian public. Recent surveys reveal a nation divided. While 54% of Italians see stronger economic relations with China as a pragmatic step in a volatile global economy, others voice concerns about becoming overly reliant on a global superpower. Italian leaders, aware of this divide, are treading carefully. Public opinion will play a crucial role in shaping not just Italy's policies, but also the broader EU strategy. A new EU-China diplomacy? Italy's relationship with China is testing the boundaries of EU diplomacy. While the EU has traditionally sought a unified approach in its dealings with China, Italy is exploring a more independent path. This strategy reflects a blend of economic pragmatism and strategic autonomy. Dr. Name, a former EU foreign policy chief, described Italy's approach as a tightrope walk, balancing loyalty to EU principles with the pursuit of national interests. If Italy's model proves successful, it could encourage other EU nations to adopt similar bilateral relationships with China. The shift might redefine EU-China relations, potentially moving away from a one-size-fits-all strategy toward a more flexible, country-specific approach. Economic growth and green partnerships. Italy's engagement with China isn't confined to trade, it's also about sustainable growth. Recent agreements between Italian and Chinese firms aim to develop green technologies, such as solar and wind energy projects expected to supply power to over 1 million Italian homes. These collaborations highlight a forward-looking aspect of the Italy-China partnership, building a greener, more sustainable future. Challenges to EU unity and transatlantic relations. Italy's growing ties with China have not gone unnoticed by its EU partners or transatlantic allies. Some fear that Italy's independent stance could undermine the EU's unity. Former European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker once emphasized that the EU's strength lies in its solidarity. Italy's deviation from collective EU policy challenges this notion, raising questions about the bloc's future cohesion. Moreover, Italy's pivot toward China is a subtle challenge to US influence in Europe. The United States has consistently urged its European allies to maintain a cautious and unified approach toward China. Italy's decision to forge its own path suggests that European nations may no longer feel bound to follow Washington's lead. A turning point in global power dynamics. Italy's strategy could signal a significant shift in global power dynamics. Traditionally, Europe has aligned with the West under US influence. However, Italy's deepening ties with China hint at a more multipolar world where nations prioritize their own economic and strategic interests. If other EU nations follow Italy's example, this could fundamentally alter the balance of power, positioning China as a central partner in Europe. The road ahead. Italy's bold approach is being closely watched. If successful, it could set a precedent for other nations like Spain, Portugal, and Greece to explore similar partnerships with China. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz recently remarked, "Europe must be open to diverse relationships that serve each member's interests." Italy's actions could indeed trigger a domino effect, reshaping EU-China relations and challenging the traditional EU model of collective decision-making. At the same time, this approach carries risks. Could prioritizing national interests over EU unity destabilize traditional alliances? Could it weaken the EU's collective voice on global issues? And how will this affect the EU's relationship with its key ally, the United States? Conclusion. A gamble with global implications. Italy's decision to strengthen its ties with China represents a calculated gamble, one that could redefine alliances, reshape the EU's future, and alter global power dynamics. While some see opportunities where others see risks, Italy's independent strategy is undoubtedly bold, The world is watching to see whether this gamble will pay off, inspire others, or lead to unforeseen consequences.